For the upcoming Yoon-Kishida summit this weekend, South Korea and Japan are to outline major agenda items as they mark the official resumption of reciprocal visits. Groups of doctors and nursing assistants are going on a partial strike, calling for a presidential veto of the Nursing Act that gives nurses more independence. Stocks in the U.S. slide on bank sell-offs despite the takeover of the failed First Republic Bank. Good afternoon. We start with the upcoming summit between South Korea and Japan this weekend. The two countries will be discussing key agenda items today ahead of Japanese Prime Minister Fumio Kishida's arrival in Seoul on Sunday. All eyes are on whether this resumption of active diplomacy could build momentum in bilateral relations amid lingering issues. Our Choi Min-jung reports.
Japanese Prime Minister Fumio Kishida will be visiting South Korea at the end of this week to meet with South Korean President Yoon. This is according to Seoul's presidential office on Tuesday. Kishida will be paying a working visit for 2 days starting Sunday, with the summit anticipated to take place on the first day. Japan's foreign ministry also announced the trip in a press release, stating the two leaders agreed to resume regular visits to each other's country, or what they call shuttle diplomacy. The upcoming visit will be the first by a Japanese prime minister for a bilateral meeting in 12 years. Talking to reporters earlier on Tuesday, the Japanese leader said the summit will be a good opportunity to exchange honest opinions on ways to develop Seoul-Tokyo relations.
I expect it will be a great opportunity to give impetus to our shuttle diplomacy and have a heart-to-heart exchange of our views on accelerating Japan-South Korea ties and drastically changing the global situation.
Now, eyes are on whether this will lead to a sincere apology from Japan for the use of forced labor during its occupation of Korea. During the previous summit in Tokyo, Yoon and Kishida were able to mend soured ties, as the South Korean president proposed a plan to compensate the Korean victims of Japan's wartime forced labor through a third party instead of the Japanese companies held responsible. However, the summit concluded without a sincere apology or response from Japan. Seoul's foreign ministry said Tuesday that it expects Seoul-Tokyo ties to improve further in the future as there are more opportunities for the leaders to meet. Later this month, South Korea, Japan, and the U.S. will reportedly hold a trilateral summit on the sidelines of the G7 summit in Hiroshima. There, the nations are expected to discuss security cooperation against North Korea's growing nuclear threats. The three-way talk comes amid heightened diplomatic tensions as North Korea, China, and Russia criticized Yoon and Biden's new deterrence strategy, dubbed the Washington Declaration, inked during their recent summit in Washington. Choi Min-jung, Arirang News.
Groups of doctors and nursing assistants are going on a partial strike today. They're calling for a presidential veto of the Nursing Act that gives nurses more independence. Our political correspondent Lee Si-hoo reports.
A total of 13 associations of doctors and nursing assistants in South Korea are going on a partial strike on Wednesday. They are protesting against the Nursing Act, which is aimed at giving nurses more independence in their duties. Members of groups like the Korea Medical Association and the Korean Licensed Practical Nurses Association are calling on President Yoon to veto the bill. They are working shortened hours and using their annual leave to take part in rallies across the country in the afternoon. They have warned of a second partial strike on May 11th and later a general strike if the president does not veto the bill.
If our request isn't accepted despite this much resistance, we will carry out a 4 million person strong general strike on the 17th.
Partial strikes are being carried out by members of local clinics on a voluntary basis to minimize inconvenience to patients. The general strike will also involve members of larger university hospitals. Last week, the opposition-controlled National Assembly passed the Nursing Act despite strong opposition from the ruling bloc. The act seeks to improve nurses' working conditions by defining their roles and duties separately from the Medical Service Act, which puts them, quote, under the guidance of physicians. It also defines the duties of nurses and nursing assistants separately. Doctors see it as an intrusion of their duties, while nursing assistants are concerned about being left out by the act. Lee Si-hoo, Arirang News.
One of the last 10 surviving victims of Japan's wartime forced sexual slavery passed away on Tuesday. One of the few surviving so-called comfort women, her personal information was not disclosed at the request of her family. Out of a total of 240 victims registered to the Korean government, there are only 9 alive, and all of them are in their 90s. The Ministry of Gender Equality and Family said they will continue to work on projects aimed at restoring the victims' honor and dignity and look after the remaining survivors. Stocks in the U.S. slide amid lingering fears of a banking crisis despite the takeover of the failed First Republic Bank. Another possible rate hike has also seemingly played a role. Our Song Yoo-jin has the details.
Stocks in the U.S. tumbled on Tuesday following the purchase of First Republic Bank by banking giant J.P. Chase. The Dow Jones Industrial Average fell 367.17 points, or 1.08% on Tuesday, ending the session at 33,684.53. The S&P 500 slipped 1.16%, and the tech-heavy Nasdaq lost 1.08%. Analysts attributed the tumbling stocks to investors' fears that the turmoil in the banking sector could spread to other regional banks after witnessing Tuesday's takeover of First Republic, the third bank failure in the U.S. this year. Some of the sharpest drops came from small and mid-sized banks. Shares of Los Angeles-based PacWest Bancorp fell 27.8%, Western Alliance Bank was down 15.1%, and Comerica lost 12.4%. The KBW Regional Banking Index fell 5.52% to its lowest point since December 2020. Big banks were no exception. J.P. Chase, whose shares saw a 2% gain after the announcement of its takeover deal on Monday, fell 1.6%. Wells Fargo fell 4.7% and Bank of America dropped 3.9%. Experts also pointed to the Federal Reserve's upcoming rate hike decision on Wednesday as another factor that led to the drop. Many are expecting the Fed to raise its key interest rate by 25 basis points to 5.25%, the highest in 16 years.
The consensus is that they're going to do another quarter hike tomorrow. What will they say and what they won't say? And that's the huge question mark for the markets tomorrow.
Investors tend to be cautious if a rate hike is likely, as higher rates mean the stock market will be declining in value. 송유진, Arirang News.
Also contributing to plunging stocks in the U.S. are fears of economic turmoil due to a potential government default. The U.S. Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen on Monday warned that the U.S. may run out of cash by June 1st if Congress fails to raise or suspend the debt ceiling to allow the government to borrow more money. However, there's a rocky road ahead as Republicans are demanding that raising the borrowing limit be accompanied by spending cuts and other cost-saving efforts. While President Joe Biden is opposed to any attempt to tie spending cuts to raising the debt ceiling, the president is set to meet with Republican and Democratic leaders at the White House on May 9th to discuss the matter. South Korean automakers Hyundai and Kia Motors saw their U.S. new car sales increase by almost 15% each on year in April. According to Hyundai Motor on Tuesday, its new sales totaled 70,812 units, while Kia sold 68,205 units. Hyundai's Santa Fe Hybrid and Kona EV, as well as Kia's Carnival and Sportage, set all-time record sales. However, Hyundai's Ioniq 5, which was excluded from the electric vehicle subsidy under the U.S. Inflation Reduction Act, saw sales drop by 13%. On May 6, the coronation ceremony for King Charles III will take place in London, the first event of its kind in 70 years. A host of foreign royals and heads of states are expected to attend, with festivities to continue across the country over the long weekend. Our Incheon has what to expect.
The last coronation of a member of the British royal family was 70 years ago, when then 27-year-old Queen Elizabeth II began her reign. And on Saturday, the ancient ritual will take place again for the coronation of King Charles III and the crowning of his wife, Queen Consort Camilla. King Charles becomes the oldest to accede to the throne at the age of 73 years. Taking charge of the ceremony at Westminster Abbey will be the Archbishop of Canterbury. Some 2,000 guests have been invited, including foreign royals and heads of state. The king has opted for a smaller, shorter, and more diverse ceremony than for his mother's coronation in 1953. The festivities will last all weekend, running into Monday, which has been proclaimed a public holiday nationwide. Events include colorful parades, public concerts, spectacular light shows, and thousands of street parties across the UK and the Commonwealth. Among the guests, British Prime Minister Rishi Sunak is due to attend, alongside cabinet ministers and peers from the House of Lords, and former UK Prime Ministers like Theresa May and Tony Blair. U.S. President Joe Biden will not be attending himself, but has confirmed that First Lady Jill Biden will take his place. It is also understood that religious leaders and representatives from across the Commonwealth will attend. Critics have questioned the cost of the lavish coronation at a time when the public is facing economic hardship and struggling with a cost of living crisis. To this, a palace spokesperson pointed to reports that more than £1 billion, that's roughly $1.25 billion US, was expected to flow into the struggling economy on the back of the event. And having so many heads of state present was also a huge networking opportunity. 이은진, 아리랑 뉴스.
South Korea is currently hosting the annual meeting of the Asian Development Bank, which is committed to achieving a resilient and sustainable Asian-Pacific region. Seoul is looking to use this opportunity to enhance trilateral cooperation with Japan and China. Our Lee Dae-young reports.
Seeking a rebound in Asia. The Asian Development Bank's 56th annual meeting kicked off on Tuesday in Incheon City, South Korea. Around 4,500 participants, including finance ministers, central bank governors, government officials of ADB member countries, and representatives of private sectors gathered to discuss key issues regarding Asia's recovery. On the sidelines, there was a meeting between the finance ministers of South Korea, Japan, and China. Korea's Chu Kyung-ho highlighted how trilateral ties can contribute to recovery from global economic crises.
Amid the global reopening, the three nations will expand cooperation not only in terms of economic sectors like finance and trade, but also travel, culture, talent exchange, and policy cooperation. Korea will actively take part in this.
During a press conference, ADB President Masasugo Asakawa announced the bank's new landmark program, the Innovative Finance Facility for Climate in Asia and the Pacific, or IFCAP. It's where South Korea and other partners such as Sweden and the United Kingdom take part to respond to climate change and expects to lock up $15 billion in new ADB projects.
IFCAP financing will support both mitigation projects to reduce greenhouse gas emissions and adaptation projects to build resilience to the impact of climate change.
ADB's accomplishments are also on display in virtual reality for an immersive experience. Visitors can see the ADB's biodiversity wetland protection projects in northeastern China. Asked about the economic benefits of climate finance, a senior economist of ADB, Albert Park, says it's avoiding losses caused by rising temperatures.
So all of these things add up, and we find that without any changes, a high emissions scenario would lead to up to 24% lost GDP in Asia by 2100, by the end of the century. And so aggressively addressing climate change means all of those damages really turns into benefits of avoiding those damages.
The economist also added that even during the process of these aggressive actions, governments should make sure that the disadvantaged are protected in order to successfully transition into a green economy. Lee Dae-young, Arirang News.
In central Seoul, in front of the presidential office in Yongsan, there used to be a military compound where South Korean citizens were prevented from entering. But that place will be open to the public for the first time in more than 100 years, having been transformed into a children's garden. This just in time for the nation's Children's Day. Oh Soo-young reports.
A scenic space to find freedom, openness, and a peace of mind. Seoul is opening a large public garden in the central district of Yongsan. in place of a former military compound that shunned South Koreans from its gates for over a century. President Yoon on Tuesday hosted an outdoor lunch for media at the pine grass lawn within the Yongsan Children's Garden ahead of its official opening at 2 p.m. on Thursday. Dedicated to future generations, Yoon said he envisioned the garden as a place for children to run and play freely on the grass.
Thursday's opening comes just a few days before the first anniversary of President Yoon's inauguration. The timing highlighted the South Korean leader's push for freedom and openness as he expressed willingness to spend more time with media to communicate freely and asked them to help in building a brighter future for the nation.
Located in front of the presidential office, with the National Museum of Korea to its side, the garden represents Yoon's pledge to communicate with and be closer to the people when he relocated his office to the Yongsan district. The opening of the garden gates is also historically significant for South Koreans. The 230,000 square meters of greenery is now being returned to the Korean public after it was occupied for 120 years, first by Imperial Japanese troops who installed the main entrance, then gradually converted into a US military base upon South Korea's liberation in 1945. Soon it will be open to all, featuring a huge lawn area as its centerpiece with a sports field to its east. To the west, a trail of houses with red tile roofs, formerly home to US military officials, stretches from the main entrance. Key locations include archives, a library and a hall that unwinds the location's decades of history in photos and records, from Japan's brutal colonization to the years of war between the two Koreas, bringing visitors to the present day where South Korea stands as a liberal democracy. To mark the launch of the garden, the exhibition hall will hold a light-themed display, and children's football and baseball games will kick off on the opening day. The opening hours are 9 a.m. to 6 p.m, with prior reservation required for first-time visitors. Reservations can be made on the Yongsan Children's Garden website 5 days in advance for Korean citizens and 10 days for foreign visitors. Seoul, Arirang News.
Despite rising tensions in the Korean peninsula, there's a place in the south that offers a glimmer of hope of peace and reunification. In that symbolic place, you can get a view of North Korea on a clear day. Our defense correspondent Kim Hyun-sung visited the site.
Welcome to Hwacheon-gun County, a stunning area of Gangwon-do province near the border between North and South Korea. It's also home to many symbols of peace, like the Peace Dam on Paro Lake.
This is Paro Lake, the only freshwater lake in South Korea that has waters directly flowing in from north of the border. And this ship is taking us to the Peace Dam. It's the closest dam that South Korea has to the DMZ line, and it was built to stop waters flooding in from the north.
Not too far from the lake is also the World Peace Bell. The makers of the bell collected around 37.5 tons of empty shells from wars around the world to create the bell, which they left incomplete, with the hope of finishing it on the day when the two Koreas reunite in peace. Anyone can ring the bell when they visit, symbolizing their commitment to peace.
Hwacheon has a painful history of war, but it was also the site of victory. It's where people come to see the sacrifices made behind the freedom that we enjoy today.
At Hwacheon-gun County, tourists can also take South Korea's highest-reaching cable car to the top of Baekangsan Mountain, more than 1 kilometer above sea level. On a clear day, visitors can catch a glimpse of North Korea in the distance. However, due to the limited capacity of the cable car, only a couple hundred tourists can experience this unique opportunity each day. Despite being just a short distance away, North Korea remains a mystery to most of the world, with decades of separation between the two Koreas. Nevertheless, Hwacheon-gun County stands as a symbol of hope for a peaceful reunification. Kim Hyun-sung, Arirang News, Hwacheon.
Let's take a look at what's going on in the world now. In Kenya, a religious cult leader accused of encouraging hundreds of followers to starve themselves to death is facing charges of murder, terrorism, and child trafficking. Paul Nthenge Mackenzie, a self-proclaimed pastor and founder of the Good News International Church, appeared in court in the Kenyan town of Malindi on Tuesday, alongside 8 other defendants. It was decided to move the case to a high court in Mombasa, where the defendants will be held in a maximum security prison. Mackenzie allegedly told his followers that they would meet Jesus if they starved themselves. Authorities have since confirmed that 109 people linked to his cult are dead, most of them children. Autopsies confirmed that most died of starvation, with 2 people likely dying by asphyxiation. The death toll is expected to rise as another 300 people are reportedly still missing. Turning over to the United Kingdom, a man has been arrested for allegedly throwing what is thought to be shotgun cartridges into the grounds of Buckingham Palace on Tuesday evening local time. The man was taken into custody on suspicion of having an offensive weapon. Police later found that he was in possession of a knife. A controlled explosion was carried out at the scene as a precautionary measure. The incident comes just 4 days ahead of the official coronation of the king, but reports say King Charles III and the Queen Consort Camilla were not at the palace at the time. According to authorities, the matter is not terror-related and may be an isolated mental health incident. Now, in a crackdown on e-cigarettes and the tobacco industry, Australia is banning recreational vaping. The government on Tuesday said it aims to ban all disposable vapes and the import of non-prescription vapes. It also aims to limit nicotine levels in e-cigarettes and to ensure they are sold solely to help smokers quit. They will only be sold in pharmacies with pharmaceutical-type packaging, and a selection of flavors will be banned. The new measures come amid an increasing number of teens vaping. Although access to vaping products already requires a prescription, it has not stopped these from being widely available through illegal markets. Vaping is considered a safer alternative to tobacco-based cigarettes, but health experts warn that it may cause long-term harm. Matthew Ashley, Arirang News.
Good afternoon. Other than big gaps in ratings, the weather has been quite pleasant for the last couple of days. Today, warm southwesterly winds are bringing up afternoon highs to warmer than norms in central parts of the country, feeling more like early summer under bright skies. Even the air quality will be normal to good nationwide all day, while southern provinces are seeing more clouds than sunshine with cooler highs this afternoon. Now enjoy the warmth and sunshine if you can today, because we are expecting a weather shift from tomorrow to murky and wet conditions. It will start to rain from Jeju late this afternoon, gradually spreading to Jeollado province by tomorrow morning. Then the entire country will have rain from tomorrow afternoon. And it could pour down on Children's Day this Friday along with strong winds, so do plan accordingly for the day. Rain continues until Saturday, which is Ipa, the beginning of summer on the seasonal calendar. That's Korea for you, and here's a look at the international weather conditions.
Thank you so much for watching. Have a great rest of the day.